Welcome to the Femininja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the Femininja Project. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Femininja Project. And we do love talking about health and wellness on this show. And I have a fantastic guest for you today. Her name is Sandy.KRUSE, and she is a wife, a mom, and a cancer survivor. Her own health issues, along with having a child diagnosed with a rare form of cancer at the age of 5, led her to pursue a career in holistic nutrition when she was in her 40s. She is the founder and owner of Sandy K Nutrition, as well as the host of the fantastic show, the Sandy K Nutrition Health and Lifestyle Queen podcast, which I had the honor to have appeared as a guest on her show in episode number 85. So check it out. It's a great podcast. And like I said, it was such an honor to be on her show. Sandy's hope and her mission is to inspire others and help them discover how a holistic lifestyle can provide for a fulfilling life. Sandy, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Hi, Cheryl. Thank you so much for having me.
It is such a pleasure to talk to you again and to see your beautiful face.
Oh, likewise, my friend.
So tell us your story. Tell the audience how you got interested in the holistic nutrition, what motivated you to go back to school in your 40s, because it's not an easy decision to make and not an easy thing to do, especially when you have children at the same time.
Yeah, it was not the easiest thing to do, but I felt a calling to do it because I felt like women need more advocacy in understanding how their body is always communicating with them and providing them with these wonderful symptoms to say, hey, it's time to take this a little bit deeper and figure out what's really going on. So I actually, in my 30s, I had 2 kids. And after the birth of my second child, there was some weird things that were going on. And I was told, suck it up, Buttercup. You just had a baby and you have a toddler as well. And it was a very traumatic birth, but I was very skinny. Then a year later, I was gaining weight. So it was kind of like that whole skinny, not fat, but I would gain weight, lose weight, and it was never investigated. And then in my 40s, exactly 1 year after my daughter was diagnosed with a soft tissue sarcoma, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And so it was very incidental, and it shouldn't have been incidental. All of a sudden, they're like, why is Sandy having migraines with aura beginning at age 41? That's odd. Usually migraines begin when you're a teenager and entering puberty. So they decided to finally do some investigative tests, and they found that I had 5 nodules on my thyroid, one of which was cancerous. And had it been really thoroughly investigated many years before, it probably could have been dealt with much differently than it had been dealt with, which was a total thyroidectomy. So they took the whole thing out. And, after that, I'm like, okay, I'm given medication now to actually create this master gland function, but I was still feeling horrible. And so I was like, I can't go on living like this. I have to figure out a way to feel better. And I've always been interested in holistic health. And I started to investigate ways that I could feel better. And I did that. And then I'm like, I got to go back to college and I got to help other people because symptoms mean something. And so that's what I did. I went back to college. I got my diploma to become a registered holistic nutritionist. I chose holistic because it's not just about the food. It's about the body as a whole. And I'm a true believer that, you can eat perfectly, but if you're doing other things wrong and you're stressed out and you're not exercising, let's just say, that's not holistic. So that's where I am now. And now I'm 51 years old and I have my own practice.
And you look fantastic, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you.
You just radiate health. So when you did finish school, what was it that prompted you to open your own practice? Because that really is a huge undertaking.
It is. And so I was sitting there trying to figure out, do I want to be a naturopath doctor or do I want to be a holistic health practitioner? And becoming a naturopath doctor would just be too many more years of school. I'm like, I don't have it in me. I'm already 46 starting. And so it actually took me 3 years to do a 2-year diploma, just because I had kids, family, all the whole gamut, dogs, the whole gamut of things to take care of. And yeah, I just felt this calling because I can't remember what your initial question was, Cheryl.
Well, what prompted you to open your own practice? Because that does take a lot of effort, and putting yourself out there like that to go on your own is really huge.
Yeah, it is. It is. But you know what? My husband is an entrepreneur as well, and he is an incredible support. And I'm like, okay, I either have to jump all in and do this or, get all this knowledge for nothing. So I had to open up a practice and it was hard. And then I'm like, okay, well, if I'm working with clients one-on-one, I had started a whole community years before I graduated because I started to build this community on Instagram, which is great. It's a great way to build a community, and Facebook and Instagram. And I was doing this as a student, but then I'm like, how do I even get clients? I got to get the word out. Then the podcast started. And really, it's more about having that megaphone where people don't necessarily have to pay to see me, but can get a lot of good advice that they can take to their own practitioner and say, hey, what about this? So it's more about the education than anything, Cheryl.
So you do educate on your podcast, and you also have a blog on your website.
Yeah, I try my best to keep that up. But as you know, as an independent business owner that does many, many different things, it's not always easy. But yeah, and I'm a big believer in cooking at home, and I advocate for good, clean food. I do not believe in diets. I am not a person that believes in strict diet. I believe that you have to listen to your body and what feels good. And if you're ever at a point where nothing feels good, that's the time you should be seeing a practitioner to figure out what's going on. Why can't I eat anything? Right. So yeah, I do what I can to keep everything up to date, but I'm a one-woman show.
Yeah, I know how that feels. It is quite a challenge, but I love your approach because it is holistic. I also love the fact that you considered the naturopathic route, but they go through the same years as a medical student. I mean, it's the same as getting an MD, and a lot of people don't realize that. They think that a naturopath just kind of does a couple of trainings here and there, but it's really, really involved. But with what you did is very involved as well, because what you're looking at is not just nutrition. You're looking at the entire lifestyle, which is why I love the word, the lifestyle queen. And that really does make a difference. So I'm so happy that you mentioned, it's not just about the food, it's about everything else. So talk about stress, how stress impacts our health and our well-being.
Well, I'm going to give you my own theory here, Cheryl, just because I love to relate it back to something that's relatable. When my daughter was diagnosed with that cancer, I had already had those thyroid nodules. Thyroid nodules do not develop in a day. It's many years of nodules growing, correct? So anybody would understand that you don't just grow, a 1-inch size nodule on your thyroid in a year. This takes many years. So I will never, ever say that my daughter getting sick made me have thyroid disease. However, I do believe, and I am a very strong believer, that I had that imbalance before. And then the stress from my daughter getting sick is what changed that one tiny little nodule from benign to malignant. I'm a big believer that stress has a huge impact on the body. And when the body is not balanced overall, which many people go through life just being suboptimal in their health. I'm not saying you can reach that summit and be perfect all the time, but I'm saying that people ignore a lot of these symptoms a lot of the time. And what happens when you ignore it for many, many years, they can manifest into something worse, which I believe is what happened to me. And the stress from my daughter getting sick is what caused me to get sick. And interestingly enough, her and I actually she had her second surgery in October 2010. I had my thyroid removed in October 2011. It was exactly almost 1 year apart. And so I'm like, this stuff doesn't happen by coincidence, right?
Wow. I'm just trying to wrap my head around your lifestyle or your situation going through that, your child with cancer and you at the same time, and how that must have impacted your family and, your poor husband and son. That is the most incredible stress, I think, ever imaginable. I mean, it's incomprehensible.
And Cheryl, I will say I did not have the tools to deal with that stress. And I think that when we as advocates for other women and other women's best health help educate and provide women with tools, no one's going to take away all your stress. Nobody has a perfect life. My life is not perfect. My life is far from perfect. And I don't think I know a single person who has zero stress in their lives. I don't think it's possible, but I had no tools. So when other women advocate for women to say, hey, try this, see if it resonates with you, see if this helps you. I had to figure out a way to deal with my own stress. And I also had to get out of that victimization. I think that that's a really, really horrible place to sit. And I believe that there's a real negative energy tied to that self-victimization. So I went on a journey after all of that. I'm like, I'm not the kind of person that's going to wallow in my misery. I just had to figure out how do I get out of it? How do I do this?
And one of the things that I picked up when I was doing your research or the research for the show was that you are a firm believer that life experiences are meant to take us to the next level of our lives. And I think that's a really important point to make, because so many of us would just sit there and wallow in that self-pity and why me and what did I do wrong? Or, why is the universe or whomever doing this to me? And that really is a very, very scary place to be.
It is. It is. And when I went on that journey, and it was really not, I went all around. I started to investigate energy and figure out, what is it about energy that can, what is it? I studied feng shui and I still do it. Every year I actually feng shui my house. And I'm a big believer in all the things like, clearing energy, clearing space. It helps to bring good energy into your home. Even the whole principle of feng shui where you clear the clutter. Well, when you clear that clutter, you're making space for other stuff to come into your life, right? So yeah, I think all of that is so important in body, mind, soul alignment.
And one of the things that you did to help bring that positive energy from a negative experience is that you built 2 websites.
I did.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
So I'll tell you, the name of the tumor that my daughter had is called plexiform fibrohistiocytic tumor. And it is a tumor that is classified as a soft tissue sarcoma, which is most often eradicated with surgery. And my daughter had to have 2. And I was just scouring for information on this, and I couldn't find anything. You can find so much information on breast cancer. And when I say information, I'm talking about studies. Like, what am I looking at here? And this is way before I went back to college. I'm like, I'm one of these people that needs to know. I need to understand, what am I dealing with and how can I make it better? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I did was look into this and found I can't find anything. And then I found this one woman's blog, and her daughter also had plexiform fibrohistiocytic tumor. I connected with her, and then I connected with another woman, and then we all kind of created our own little community. And I said, I've got to do more. And so I built a website, and that website is called PFFHT. .weebly.com. And that website, I still get people contacting me. Wow. So we created a Facebook group, and this type of tumor is very common with younger children or teenagers. And we have a Facebook community that it's still quite small, but it's with members from all over the world. And so I felt really, really good about creating that, because I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your child, but guess what? Her initial results were inconclusive. It's often misdiagnosed. I was told maybe this is just a fatty little cyst, and she didn't even have an appointment with a specialist for 6 months until Mama Bear here pushed. Oh yeah, I pushed. And one of my husband's childhood friends ended up operating on our daughter. So now I'm going to get all teary-eyed. But it was, because nobody would see her. And so, that's where the advocacy part came in. That's where the website came in. And our friend of the family operated on her.
That's a really important message here. So let's emphasize that you really have got to be your own advocate. Yeah. And not only, of course, you're advocating for your child, but even as an adult, sometimes you really need to have a partner who can help you speak for yourself and to support you. That's so important, because, things do get brushed off.
Yeah. So. I feel advocacy, and that's probably that right there is the beginning of why I do what I do now. Mm-hmm. Because I'm a big believer, and listen, I don't know where we'd be. I would never knock allopathic medicine. Mm-hmm. I would never, but I also believe that they're just very good at sick care versus healthcare, and really looking at what's going on before you get sick. And so with my daughter, she wasn't physically sick. I just saw this bump and I'm like, this isn't normal. And, that's where your intuition, that's where all that energy comes into play, right? So back to that whole website thing, I built that website, and then I built another one on thyroid, because people think, oh yeah, boom, just take that thyroid out and you'll be taken care of for the rest of your life with medication. And I'm like, no, I had to advocate strong there too, by really pushing to get T3 as an add-on to my medications, because I was really sick, and not the same person I was before.
I actually do have nodules on my thyroid, and I was diagnosed, this was like 2 years ago. And it started out, I felt like I had rocks in my throat. And when I would swallow, it's like, oh my gosh, something's not right here. Oh yeah. And then I did like a book event that was 2 days long, and talking all day long in a room where the acoustics were really horrible, background noise and stuff. And so trying to talk over everything and everybody else and all the noise. And after that, it was terrible. And my voice was so raspy. And at the same time, another friend of mine who was older than me was diagnosed with throat cancer.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, I better get this checked out. So it was thyroid nodules, did have the biopsies, all came out benign, thank God. But I wasn't happy with what I was being told. It was like, you're fine, it's okay. And, my mother had had thyroid cancer and had hers removed when she was 50. And
Oh,
so, and all
really?
my sisters have thyroid issues. I'm not on any medication, but I was going to a chiropractor at the time that said, you need to get this book. So it was Overcoming Thyroid Issues, something like that. But that's when I learned about like the T3 and stuff. And oftentimes when you have thyroid issues, here's the panel, this is fine, blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, hey, this is missing, we'll put you on Synthroid and it fixes everything. And it was so fascinating reading this book. So I figured I at least was informed when I went to the endocrinologist and all that kind of stuff. But, I was told everything's fine, don't worry about it. And I'm currently looking for a naturopath right now.
Oh, that's so good. You know what's another book I would recommend to anyone in your audience who may have thyroid issues it's called Stop the Thyroid Madness.
Oh, that's good.
It is like a Bible. And this is before I went back to college. And so I had my thyroid removed at 41, went back to college at 46. So I had started researching thyroid issues, obviously, after I had my thyroid out, because I'm like, I'm not even the same person anymore. I don't even look like the same person anymore. Like what happened? And that book was incredible. Incredible.
So we're going to include that book and the other one that I just mentioned. We'll include that in the description of the podcast so people can use that for resources, as well as we will have the link to the one website with your the daughters. I can't even remember the name of the cancer.
I know.
We'll have that and the link to the one for the thyroid, the one that you did. Because I think that's really important to help empower people. And that's what I like to do with the show. It's not about, ninja fighting. It's about taking care of yourself and finding those little pathways to help you find your own personal power. And your healthcare is so important. I actually have a young niece who has a podcast now called Three Bald Chicks with two of her friends that she met online. And all three of them have alopecia.
Oh.
And she had her thyroid removed when she was 21.
Interesting.
And then 4 years later, full-blown alopecia, which, as you know, is an autoimmune disorder. So
it is. You just mentioned autoimmune diseases, and that right there is it's just crazy, out of control nowadays. And I encourage people, because I have actually worked with autoimmune clients, and I encourage people to find a practitioner that can really, really help you get into remission. Because I'm not sure if you know a lot about this, Cheryl, but typically when you have one autoimmune disease, more follow.
yes,
right?
yes.
And so, I'm not sure. Maybe I had Hashimoto's. I might have had Hashimoto's, Cheryl, but I don't know now. I don't know anything because my thyroid's gone. It's just gone. So now it's just managed. But that could have been diagnosis. I could have also had postpartum thyroiditis, which is something that can happen with women after they have a baby. And one of the big signs of postpartum thyroiditis is not enough breast milk. And I didn't have enough breast milk with my daughter, whereas with my son, I had mastitis twice. I had too much breast milk. So these are all symptoms. And I'm just such a big, big believer in not ignoring the symptoms.
Wow, that's pretty amazing that nobody came up with that, possibility for you. Like, it's like, well, we might want to look into this because there is this postpartum, thyroid condition that we need to check for.
Yeah, but Cheryl, you know what though? The thing is that a lot of women are shut down before they even consider it, right? So I might have deep down inside thought, this is weird. But then I'm hearing all these voices around me saying, you're a new mom. you have to just deal with the no sleep. You have to just deal with the stress. You have to deal with the crying baby. You have to deal, right? And so because I didn't even know to advocate for myself. So I can't really, I can't go around laying blame. I'm kind of saying, well, this was kind of the way it was back in the day when I was 35 years old.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to go back to actually my personal story, which you can hear that on episode 85 of Sandy K Nutrition. Let's give the name again. What's the full name of your podcast?
Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen.
She is the queen, isn't she? But that was my own personal experience of being a chronic pain patient for 2.5 years when I was in my mid 30s, which is what launched me into my path or my journey of exploration, self-exploration, health and wellness. So I'm very grateful for the experience in retrospect because it's behind me. But that does happen a lot. People will put labels on you, and especially if they're medical experts or experts in any field, if they're putting labels on you, then you have a tendency, you hear it often enough, you become that and you lose hope. So if someone is telling you, you're just a new mom, you're supposed to not get any sleep, look into it a little bit more deeply and investigate it for yourself, even though you have no sleep and you probably don't feel like investigating anything. Take matters into your own hands is basically what we're saying. Because you've got the power and you can actually make a huge difference in your health and your longevity going forward.
I agree. And nowadays, there's so many more advocates available, right? So 16 years ago, when I was a new mom for the second time, there wasn't that. I don't even think Facebook was around.
No.
We're getting old, Cheryl.
Well, when I had my chronic pain syndrome, my gosh, that was 30 years ago. So there wasn't even the internet back then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, nowadays, really, you can over research all your things and diagnose yourself, which I would never encourage, right? So work with a practitioner who has some experience, right?
Thank you for bringing that up too, because one time there was another issue in my life. I won't go into it, but I was told by the doctor to, go and Google it and go look at online. And when I was looking at this with my husband, so I was standing and he was at his computer and I was reading over his shoulder and I just looked at him and I said, I will kill myself. I will not live with this. Oh. It was that bad. And then long story short, I found a physical therapist who specialized in what was going on with me. I went to her once, and she said, oh my God, you didn't look it up on the internet, did you? And I said, well, yeah, that's what the doctor told me to do. And she says, those are the worst case scenarios. And actually, after she did the evaluation, and this wasn't the chronic pain syndrome that I talk about in your show, but it was another one down the road that was so awful. And she did the evaluation and she looked at me and she says, I really think I can help you. And I burst into tears. It was the first time I heard that. And I was dealing with that condition for 2 years. And somebody finally said, I think I can help you. And it was just an imbalance in my pelvic floor muscles.
Ah, yes. Common, Cheryl, very common.
So ladies, if you, or even gentlemen, because I know it happens to men too, if you are ever diagnosed with something called interstitial cystitis, you might want to check out, have somebody who can check out your pelvic floor.
I'm actually seeing a pelvic floor physiotherapist right now.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I'm seeing one right now. And I actually, on my own podcast, I interviewed Kim Vapny. She is known as the vagina coach. And,
I love it.
I love her. She's written like 4 books too. She's just a strong advocate in women's pelvic floor health. Mm-hmm. I think that can cause a lot of issues for women, whether you've had children or not. I mean, I had some issues with prolapse after the birth of my second child, and I'm seeing this physiotherapist just to strengthen my pelvic floor before I go into menopause, because they say that's the best thing to do, right?
Exactly. Well, see, I never had children. So my problem was that mine was actually in spasm.
Oh,
So my pelvic floor muscles were actually like, the way she explained it is they should be like, round like a bowl. She says yours are flat like a plate.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was just trying to, find that balance and stuff. Crazy talk. I didn't expect we'd go down this road, but
I know. But you know what? Wellness is a whole gamut of topics, right? So
exactly. And because pelvic floor health is so important to our general health and well function in many, many ways, that there is hope for it. I mean, I was told by the doctor, and, we'll just give you more medications. And I was on so many medications. And even a lot of the side effects were that, you will be dizzy, you will be lightheaded. And I'm like, I'm trying to drive a car here. This is not really good.
Wow.
And I was constantly nauseated, and I had lost a lot of weight. And when I went into the doctor and I'm like, I don't feel any better, I'm still in this incredible pain. And he's, we'll just give you more medications. And he gave me a packet, like a sample, and I turned it over. And the first side effect was nausea. Yeah. And I looked at him, I said, I'm already nauseated. I can't eat. Look at me. And he says, we'll give you something for the nausea. It's like, oh my God, I am not a chemistry set.
Like building constant. Let's give you this for this, and let's give you this for this. And then, oh, wait a minute. Now you're deficient in all these nutrients. Mm-hmm. So you got to take all these supplements now to replenish these nutrients. Oh gosh. Yeah,
it's just crazy. So, and it's amazing how many conditions are really musculoskeletal. I mean, this was all musculoskeletal. My other chronic pain issue was musculoskeletal. So looking at the body holistically, is just really the way to go. And I think things are changing now, because when I had my chronic pain issue, and even when I had the pelvic floor issue, I don't think that alternative health and modalities were as accepted as they are now. Or if you're working with somebody who poo-poos the whole thing, you might want to check out and see if you can find another doctor. I actually had horrible palpitations a couple of years ago, and they were bad. And I had a feeling I knew what was causing it, but I wasn't sure. And I figured, I'm over 50, palpitations, it's my heart. I just want to get it looked at and cleared. So I went to my PCP, and he checked me out, did an EKG and all that stuff. And he says, no, you're fine. You could go to a cardiologist if you want to. Then he said, why don't you do some of those things that you did for some of the other things that you've had before? So he knew that I did a lot of different alternative health modalities. So I said, well, that was my plan, but because it was my heart, I thought it was important to get it checked out. So basically it was from my martial arts.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I knew. I knew it was from the martial arts, because every time I would go home and I'd be working with one of my partners, and we were working on specific points that happened to be like acupuncture points. So we would be attacking those points, and I'd be driving home, and it was like there was a butterfly in my chest and I could hardly breathe. And so my sensei is an acupuncturist, and I went to him the next day and I said, could the work that we've been doing with these Hoshi points cause palpitations? And he's like, well, yeah. He said, those are all cardiac and pericardium points. So he did one acupuncture session with me, and boom, it was fine.
Yeah, see, that's the thing about symptoms, right? There could be so many different causes, underlying root causes, which is, I feel, very important to look at. Like it could have been also thyroid, could have also been cortisol, right? Like these are all factors that could come into play, right?
It could have been a cardiac arrhythmia. You never know. So you do want to get those things checked out, and cleared. But then that, okay, I knew that it wasn't a heart issue. I figured let's go the next step, which would be acupuncture. Could this be from the attacking those points? And it was.
Oh, that's good to know then, right?
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, the body is just so fascinating, and everybody is different. And I think that's another thing that drives me crazy sometimes in traditional medicine or traditional healthcare. It's almost like everybody is the same.
Yeah. We're definitely all very different and unique.
The other things that you learned about during this whole process is, of course, we've already talked about the lowering your stress and finding a way to lower your stress in your lifestyle and finding balance. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations on how to do that?
Yes. There's some amazing adaptogenic herbs that I use in my practice to help not get rid of the stress, but
Mhm.
mitigate the effects of the stress on the body, which is what we need. And we can't get, like I said before, you can't always get rid of the stress. So some herbs that I love to work with are ashwagandha, and I love rhodiola. Those are amazing just to kind of help that more chill feeling, let's just say. And it doesn't change your disposition or anything like that. It just helps the stress to not really have such a strong impact on the body. Those are some herbs that I absolutely love. For women who are still menstruating, I always recommend reishi mushroom. And you can drink this in a tea. I recommend this in the luteal phase. So this is in the second 2 weeks of the cycle, when the body of a woman, and this is, it's always been one of my pet peeves, when a guy will comment that, she might be bitchy because she's PMSing. And I'm like, well, actually, it's physiological, because a woman in the second half of her cycle is more in a sympathetic nervous system state. Okay. And so things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, reishi mushroom, all those things are great to kind of give you that more chill feeling and help switch the body from sympathetic to parasympathetic, which is a place that you want to live. We have our sympathetic nervous system there for a reason. If we're running away from a lion, we definitely want to have that system in place where we're going to run and go, okay, I'm going to get the hell out of here. But you don't want to live there, right? Because that's where those stresses can really impact the health of the body if you're always there. So those are some things that I love to use. I also love, obviously, meditation. Now, meditation can be really tough for a lot of people. I have been meditating for over 4 years, but I find with my type of genetics, because I do a lot of deep work into genetics, it's very hard for me to meditate. And so 4 years ago, I bought a Muse meditation headband. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Cheryl. You put it on your head and you can actually see how much time is your brain sitting in alpha, beta, theta, all the different waves. And so for me, my goal is always to do 10 minutes, 5 days a week. And if I can get 3 minutes of that best, calmest state out of the 10, then I'm like, okay, that's good for me. I've spent a little bit of time in that really, really healthy space of meditation. And then, of course, people seem to forget what's right outside our door. Okay, even if you live in a city, I'm sure you can find a place where you can go for a walk in nature. You have pets. I always try and walk in, I have a lot of ravines and forest in where I live. Nature is healing. And that right there, as you all know, during COVID, you're told to stay locked up in your house. And I'm like, okay, I can't really go anywhere, but I can go for a walk with my dog. And I am going to go for a walk, and I'm going to feel that nature, feel the oxygen from the trees, like all of that is so healing, and it will switch that body from that fight or flight to that rest and digest. So those are a few of my favorites. I can keep going on.
Yeah, getting out in nature is so powerful, and people forget that.
Yeah, I think people forget that right outside our doors, or for the most part, depending on where you live, but most people can find a park, even if you live in the city. Even like, downtown Toronto, you might be in downtown Toronto, but you can go 20 minutes south or whatever and find a park. That's just find a park where there's trees.
Yeah. So the other thing is gratitude.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Well, when you're in that victimization state, it's very hard to be in a gratitude state. And I always say, you gotta figure out how to get out of that mentality. I'm not saying don't feel it, because I'm a big believer that you gotta feel your feelings. So if you feel like a victim, deal with it. But sometimes you might need help to get out of that, whether that's a therapist, whether that's meditation. And when you get out of that, that's when you can go, God, I'm so lucky. I'm so fortunate. So look at all the things that I've gone through. Or I can look at it in a different way and go, oh my God, look at the cards I've been dealt and what a crappy life I've lived, right? So it's always a choice. But I do believe that you sometimes have to feel all the feels, whether they're not the greatest feelings, but you kind of have to dig a little deeper, and then out the other end, you can find that gratitude. You can't stifle what you're feeling, right? But then, I have a gratitude journal, and when I'm having a difficult time feeling that gratitude, I will write in the journal, just because it's a way for me to bring up those feelings when I'm having a hard time to feel them. Right? The other thing I love is I love to burn incense. I feel incense is, a good way of clearing energy. So I read this once a long, long time ago, and I believe it was from like a shaman or something like that. But they said, anytime you have an argument with a family member, open up a window and burn a little incense in the space. And that will help diffuse the energy from that argument. And it's funny, right? Because if, let's say, you walked into a room and your two good friends were having an argument and they had just finished, and you walked into the room, you can walk in and go, holy smokes, I feel something over here and it ain't good, right? So energy is very, very real. And when you can clear that energy, again, you're making some space for that gratitude, right? And I always say, I can't tell you what's going to resonate with you. I can give you a bunch of options because I've done so many. I actually saw a Reiki healer, and Reiki's not for everybody. And I always say, be careful with who you allow into your energetic space. I always believe in that. And it doesn't matter who they are. And I saw this Reiki healer, and she was like, I feel, this was after my daughter was diagnosed. She's like, I feel like there's nothing. Like I had nothing. And I'm like, oh geez, like, am I dead inside? Like what's going on? And so I had to figure out how to kind of open up. I think I was just very closed off. Right? I was just shut down, closed off. So I worked with her a little bit. And I also worked with a shaman. And so I'm a big believer, work with what resonates with you. And I will say there's a lot of things you can do in the privacy of your own home too, right? Like I love to take, I don't know if you know a lot about magnetic clay, like clay from the Mojave Desert.
I don't.
This is really kind of interesting because somebody I actually coached to do this, they bought pure, clean clay from the Mojave Desert, and they put it in their bath. So they had a bath. It was like they were stuck. Their energy was stuck. And that can sometimes happen where you're like not happy, not sad, not anything. And so I said, take a bath in this. You dissolve it first in warm water, then you dump it into your bath. And this person, I don't remember if it was the next day or a few hours later, I can't remember, but they had the biggest release, crying. And they're like, I don't know what's going on with me. Like, I'm not a crier and I don't understand. And it was like there was something stuck within them, and that helped to release it. So I'm always like, find what works with you.
Wow. Because there's so much out there.
Yes.
There is so much out there.
Yeah.
So there's one last thing is spirituality, and what you say on your website that goes beyond the teaching as the Catholic teachings as a child that you learned. And I think that's really important because spirituality is such a huge, huge topic. And it's, one of those things that, you and I were raised similarly. And when you were talking about your DNA and how hard it is for you to meditate, I was laughing to myself because I'm the same way. And we do kind of have the same ethnic background.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, just going beyond that and to really embracing that spirituality and going through a lot of the things that I went through, that's where I really found my spirituality and my spirit through martial arts and through all the difficulties that I've been through.
Yeah, I I am a big believer, like you, that there is no constraints
Mhm.
in spirituality. There is no, you're bad for doing this, you're good for doing this. You're like, we are imperfect beings, and we're on this planet to really learn. And what do we all want? We all want to be loved. We all want to be
Mhm.
accepted. And so, there were certain things in my upbringing with, I wasn't ever really deep into the church. I was I was a rebel, let's just say. But, there were certain things that didn't resonate with me. I didn't feel that if we make mistakes, we should be punished. I
Mhm.
feel that if we make mistakes, we should learn from it. That's why
Mhm.
we're here, right? We're not here to continue to make the same mistakes, and we all make them. Like, we say the wrong things or we do the wrong things. We're imperfect beings, but I am a big believer that there's something so much bigger than just us here having a conversation. But it's not about do this and you're going to get this, and do that and you're going to go here. You're going to hell for this. And
Mhm.
I don't believe in that. I believe that it's all about more love and spirituality and just growing as a person.
Mhm. Yeah, we were definitely not raised on that philosophy or that belief system. It was, yeah, right or wrong, good or bad, and most of us were bad just for, things. Sometimes I couldn't even figure out why.
Yeah, just for being imperfect, which we all
Yeah.
are. I mean, and I always say that. I always say I reserve the right to change my mind, and I am imperfect and I'm going to make mistakes, period. You know?
So, Sandy, you do work with people online.
Yeah, internationally, I do.
Okay, good. So tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you, how they can find you, learn more about you. So you can give all the links. We will have them on the episode description, but I really like for the guests to have the opportunity to say it of where
Sure.
we can find you.
You can send me an email, sandy@sandyknutrition.ca. I'm on Instagram @sandyknutrition. I work with women. I do not do group programs. I'm not saying anything's wrong with it. I just personally don't believe in it. I work with women primarily over the age of 40, and I work very deeply to address the root causes of their symptoms. And typically that is a cause of imbalances in their body systems. And so I work to rebalance those body systems so that they feel good again. I typically work with women for 3 months at a time. I will take clients just for 1 month if the issues are more minor. I do read functional lab tests. I do not personally do the tests myself. I'm not medically authorized to do that, but I do help, and I am trained in reading functional diagnostic testing. So sometimes I will take a client just to understand how to read, let's say, a Dutch hormone test, because they can get pretty complicated. So that's what I do. And I love to work with women and just help them feel better again.
Mhm. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here, Sandy. This has just been wonderful having you on the show and having you share your story and your wisdom with all of us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Cheryl. I really appreciate you calling me to be on your show.
Well, I appreciate you having me on yours as well. So before we sign off, is there any final pearls of wisdom that you want to share with the audience?
You don't have to feel suboptimal in your health. It is our God-given right to age well. We are meant to age well. You've seen it before. There are elders. My personal goal is to be one of those elders someday, and for people to come to me with all sorts of wisdom. And no, disease is not right around the corner when you're aging. So that's just what I want to say.
Well, that is a perfect way to wrap things up. And thanks. That's can't hear that enough.
Yeah. Thank you, Cheryl.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And check out Sandy's website and check out her podcast. She has a lot of fantastic information in both places. Check out the other two sites too, and share this information with anybody that you know or think might need it. Because when we communicate with each other and we share our information, I think the world is going to be a better place, and we're all going to be a lot healthier because of it. And that is the way of the Femininja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the Femininja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.